let's get going with the class. So what we're going to have is a 10-minute meditation, which I will lead through, and it's just a way of arriving. So if you need a moment to set yourself up, you don't have to have a formal meditation posture, but if you do, great. If you've got a space for that, that's helpful, and I'll give you a moment to do that. And even if you're just sitting in your chair at home, maybe just taking up a posture which is more expressive of alertness and that kind of mood of coming into awareness and taking a conscious decision, just awareness together for a few moments. So could I ask somebody to turn down the lights before we meditate, please? And what I thought we could do for the meditation is the fifth stage of the metta bhavana. I've certainly noticed, and I'm not the only one who's noticed, that there's many more points of empathy that we're finding at this time with each other, and it's a really precious time for that reason. One of the points of empathy I've been feeling a lot is for people who are lonely, and in solitude all the time, or that's their normal way of being. I had an email from somebody recently saying they're getting more attention from neighbours than they've ever had in their lives, and presumably when this is all over they will possibly be more lonely again. But it might be that we're finding empathy with people whose lives are precarious in various ways financially, of course with people who are ill, people who we know. So there's lots of points of empathy, and there's lots of points of seeing the positive in people as well. So people are exercising self-restraint, and self-restraint, is a compassionate activity at this time. So there's a lot of good-heartedness. And it's easy, I think what I'm going to be talking about is the way we can get into theories and abstractions and quickly move into a bit of empathy that you've connected with over this period, and just allowing that its space. It's a precious thing, and then including others as well, including whoever you like. I'll ring a bell at the end, but I'll lead us in. I hope you can hear me okay. I hope everyone's here now. So the chat is apparently working, so we can chat in the chat. That's good. Okay, yeah, after the meditation, the chat box is open, so you can chat to each other. Great, we can chat. That's a relief. I didn't want to have to talk to myself for a whole hour. I do that enough anyway. So, good. So beginning with that sense of freedom, the freedom to feel, the freedom to notice, to pay attention to whatever's arising. And beginning with paying attention to the level of the body, the experience of the presence of a body. Noting any areas of tension or feelings of unease, and also areas where there's just pleasant sensation, warmth, maybe in the hands. And we can allow those areas of the body that hold tension to let go around the belly and the shoulders. And the throat, jaw. In Zen they have the saying, sit with the body like a mountain. And with this broad base, becoming aware of aware of the heart. The mind. All the inclinations of the heart. And they say the heart is like an ocean. We sit with the body like a mountain and the heart like an ocean. And the mind like the sky, so the mind, including the thoughts and images like clouds, and the blue sky of awareness. It's boundless, spacious. And then moving into a period of metta practice, bringing to mind self and other with warmth and empathy. and including the wish, may all beings be well and happy. So in a moment we'll bring this short meditation to an end. Okay, so if we could have the lights up. Sorry? Great, so sorry for the technical problems at the beginning. We're back now. Do you want to say a few people who are here? Or?
Yeah, Maitreya Bandhu is here.
Maitreya Bandhu is here, great, thank you. And Vidyadhaka, I'm pleased to hear that, thank you. Good friends of mine. Who?
Louise, from the Dharma team.
Louise, okay, welcome Louise, hello.
And Akasha Mitra.
Oh, Akash Mitra, hi. Good, good.
Dairuchi is here.
Lovely, Dairuchi, he lives down the road, that's excellent.
Adriana is here.
Adriano Cozzi.
No, Adriana.
Adriana, sorry, Adriana.
Esther is here as well.
And Esther, hello Esther, hi. Great. Okay, that's good. So, welcome everyone. And what we're going to do, we'll be finished by 8 o'clock. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes or so. And if you've got any questions, fire away. I will do my best to answer those questions. That's all I can say. And yeah, so we'll finish by 8. What I wanted to talk about this evening is this notion of taking refuge and what we take refuge in. And it's a common teaching in Buddhism, taking refuge. So what do we mean by refuges? Okay, so well, a refuge, a mountain refuge, if you're out on the mountains and you are there's a storm coming in, you take refuge in a hut if there is one, and you think that's good. So in an obvious literal sense, that's what a refuge is a place of safety. So this is used metaphorically. So what do we mean? In the Buddhist tradition, a refuge is a refuge from the sufferings of conditioned existence. That's putting it in its highest sense. So if we take a false refuge would be trying to get out of conditioned existence. So that's, when we say that, we just mean the world. We mean I'll come on to what we mean by the false refuges, but it means we're trying to get something out of conditioned existence which it isn't going to deliver. That is some kind of ultimate security or happiness or a sense of ourself that is going to be validated by managing to arrange things according to a particular idea that we have. So we take refuge in things all the time. So one of the examples of this that I was thinking about, which is ubiquitous probably for all of us, is that at a certain point our plans fell apart, didn't they? Now I had in January, I spent January planning my year. I had some retreats planned I was leading. I had some holidays I was looking forward to. I had a sense of where my job was going to go, and I'd even planned a civil partnership and all sorts of things that came unstuck. And there was that period when I was thinking, well, maybe I'll still be able to do that, and then maybe I'll squeeze the holiday in there and all of that. And then there was that point when I realised, actually, this isn't going to happen like this. And I thought, well, my reflection on that was that what it showed up to me was that there had been a lot of expectation that things were going to work out according to a plan that I had in my mind. Of course, planning is a completely natural and normal activity. We do it all the time. What I was left with was presumably what we all experience, was a degree of uncertainty and maybe upset, maybe some difficulty, maybe even some fear. There was certainly a lot of that around. So one reading of the situation would be to say, well, it was the COVID virus that's caused this uncertainty and this fear, and in an obvious sense, that is the near cause of all this particular thing that we're going through. But looked at it in a more reflective way, in a more subtle way, of course, it just revealed the extent to which we sort of take our. It just reveals. Certainly revealed to me my investment in the future and in a future idea of me having carried out my plans over the course of the year, and a sense that, further down the year, by about autumn, a lot of these plans would have taken shape, and I would have had a great year, and it would have gone really well. And then, so there was that sense, and in a way, it just this is like any illness or any personal tragedy. It always reveals this aspect that we assume that our plans are going to take shape in a certain way. We maybe make provisions for them not working out, but there's this kind of hidden assumption that doesn't usually get revealed. I wasn't aware that I had been doing this until it was taken away, and once it was taken away from me, I was left with my uncomfortable feelings. Now, in taking a reflective, more Buddhist position or Buddhist reflection on this is how things are. This is a natural state. Uncertainty, fear, they're very human qualities, and they're constantly being revealed to us through various things that happen to us. So, yes, so whenever plans are thwarted, there is an opportunity. But of course, then what we're left with is these uncomfortable, quite difficult feelings. And I was trying, like a lot of us were, to sort of get things going and rearrange things, which is all necessary and good. But I certainly realized at a certain point, actually, I need to just pay attention to what's going on. I just need to meditate at this time. And the meditation has become really a key thing for me. I always try to meditate, but I've realized that particularly when there's discomfort, when there's difficulty, it needs to be given space and felt and known and seen. Otherwise, well, I'll come on to that. So that's the first thing. So future planning. So when things collapse, it can reveal the degree of refuge that we're taking in a picture of things working out in a certain way in the future. And that usually has to do with our security, our sense of value, self-worth, or meaning, or just our life going well for us. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's not like that's Buddhism comes along and says you shouldn't plan, you should just live in the moment, never plan. That would be taking it to the other extreme. And that doesn't usually work very well either. In fact, that's a disaster normally. Just trying to live in the moment, I've never really managed that. But we bring ourselves into the present, that's different. And that's a practice. And that is one of the things that I'm going to come to that we can do to get towards a truer refuge. But the one I wanted to concentrate on was something that I noticed then happening a little bit after I'd made an adjustment to the fact that things weren't going to go the way I wanted. And I started to notice, how that was affecting me, and I started noticing what was happening. Then I noticed another false refuge that I was taking. And that was in the tendency to interpret what's going on. If I was an evolutionary biologist, I'd be telling you that planning and interpreting the world are natural human things that we just do for very, very good reasons. We think about things, we interpret, we theorize, particularly at times of difficulty. It's a very natural thing to be doing. So, making that point. But so what do I mean about taking refuge in interpretation? Subhuti, who's the president here, he came up with a lovely phrase, which he said was, we settle out a picture of how things are in our minds very often. So on a personal level, an example of that might be if, say you're at work and your manager gives you some negative feedback and you take it badly, like we do, like we all do, take negative feedback. It's difficult, isn't it? However much you keep smiling on the surface, it hits you at a certain level. Usually as an unpleasant feeling in the body, a tension or whatever. And then there's the mind. So we call the chitta in Buddhism. This is the conditioned mind. We're conditioned to have a kind of reflexive response to that sort of discomfort. Thoughts, images, emotions arise. And then after that, or very much in concert with that at the same time, we start to interpret what's going on. Oh, they've said that because of this. And we might interpret it against ourselves, or we might interpret something about them. We may seek validation from somebody else's perspective. We may go and ask our friend, what do you think of that guy? Or woman, whoever is given the feedback. And then you might also build out theories about the whole workplace that you live in, the whole environment, the society you live in, the whole structure of neoliberal architecture in the West, or whatever way you want to start interpreting what's happening, you build up an interpretation. And if we do this enough times, throughout our life, and we all do this all the time, we settle out a picture of how things are. It's like that in the workplace. They're like that, they're that kind of person, I'm this kind of person. This is how things are. And we take that to be just how things are. And that's taking refuge, really. That's clinging, and clinging is another sort of technical Buddhist-y sort of word. But it means we've built up craving and grasping around a view of how things are. And it's emotionally loaded, it's not neutral. We think it is, we don't think, oh, I'm craving and clinging to that view again. We think this is how things are. They're like this, and I'm like that, and the world's like this. And that has big effects, so that has an effect on how we then interpret further experiences that we have and how we act. So this has a big, big implication. So that's interpretation. It's called samya in Buddhism, and it can be quite advanced, sort of theorizing and speculating. So here we are with COVID, and the theorizing and the speculation has kind of gone into overdrive, hasn't it? And again, it's quite understandable why that is, because we are seeking a solution. We want to solve the uncertainty and the difficult feelings. Of course, we want to solve the problem of the virus as well, so we need some people coming up with theories, we need scientists, we need all of that. But there is the danger, I think, of going into theories sort of endlessly and in an unaware kind of way. So, I hope it's not just me who sits around thinking about things rather too much and getting in my head and abstracted and tense. I think you'll notice that if you're clinging to a theory or it's become a bit, that your body is tense, you're feeling a bit, you get defensive and reactive if anyone contradicts your theory of how things are going. And it can be just quite subtly unpleasant to be in that world of speculating. And the one thing that I think it really is a shame is that it does squash the positives that we're getting out of this experience. If you go into, understandable sets of thoughts about where this came from, where it's going, how we're going to do this, and how things are going to be, all the time, if that's what's going on, it can block off a lot of the sort of the positives of this situation. So the positives I was mentioning earlier for me have been increased sense of empathy. It just seems that in this whole coronavirus, we've been looking sideways, haven't we? We've been looking sideways at our neighbours and people around the world in a different way. It's opened up a perspective which I've never known opened up before. We have a chance to see the common humanity of others. And when the Prime Minister became ill, I felt shocked. People, my friends felt shocked. People went on social media and said, I disagree profoundly with the Prime Minister on this point, but I do hope he gets well. There was a strong sense of well-wishing towards the Prime Minister. And that's the precious thing. That's when you start to notice that, underneath, that's more important, that's more fundamental. Now, to get to that, to keep that connection, we have to stay with the not knowing. We have to stay with the sense of the uncertainty of this, because that is the doorway. There will be difficulty, there is difficulty. But if we reject that difficulty and we go into theorizing and speculation non-stop, and we get into an argumentative frame of mind, which eventually leads to a sort of blaming state of mind, we lose our access point to empathy, to compassion, and to connection with others. So this is not to say there's anything wrong with speculating. I'm a champion speculator. I love doing it. I enjoy it. I do it with my coffee in the morning, have a bit of Radio 4 on, and speculate. But there is a danger to that if that's all that we do. And so this theorizing, we're quite aware of at least the dangers of taking, say, a religious worldview as literally true and sort of clinging to that to give us security against the inherent insecurity of things. We're quite used to that analysis, or at least I am. But that's also true with science. So in our society, we tend to go to science to give us the facts and give us the lowdown. But even that can be something that we go to with an expectation that it's going to, we're going to pin things down and get things clear and get things absolutely ordered. But of course, science isn't like that. Science is a moving feast itself. Science changes. That's one of the axioms of science, is that it's always shifting. It's just a methodology, and even the methodologies are questioned. All of the scientific reports are themselves interpretations. Looked at from one sense, they're all just words, which all require interpretation. And we don't read a lot of them scientific reports anyway. We read what people say about those scientific reports and their interpretations of them. And experts disagree with each other. So whilst we do need science, and we desperately need science in our society, we can also, get into a sense of taking refuge in scientific explanations for how things are. And that can also distance us that can also lead us into argumentation, disputation, and tension. So I hope that gives a sense of those two areas. And then, so maybe I'll just pause there, and then we'll come back to a few ideas, and maybe you'll have some more ideas about how we can sort of positively take refuge in the three jewels. Why don't I pause there, and then we can have some questions. Okay, so there aren't any questions yet, but I've only just said are there any questions?
There's a question from Fred,
Fred, okay.
which is, how would you recommend I practice when I notice myself building up a lot of energy behind future plans? This has been coming up whilst in isolation.
Okay, so Fred asked the question, how would I recommend to practice with the energy that comes up? Is that the energy?
It says when I notice myself building up a lot of energy.
When I notice myself building up a lot of energy, and that's happening behind future plans, yeah. Well, yeah, I completely get that. So I've been practicing with a much stronger sense of commitment to sitting for a certain period of time. The thing about future plans, when I'm in a very busy state of mind and I'm very absorbed in the plans, is that sometimes I don't get into the meditation. So I'm going to talk about it in terms of meditation. Of course, there's many other things you could do to work off energy and come more into the body. But in terms of meditation, I've been saying to myself, look, I'm definitely going to sit for 40 minutes and making a strong commitment. And also bringing to mind the refuges, the true refuges, in an immediate sense. It's not that complicated, because if you're a practicing Buddhist, even if you've been practicing, doesn't matter for how long, you've probably got an innate sense of the Buddha. You don't need to have a big golden Buddha in front of you for that, although it might be good if you do. It's for me, I'm not very visual, but I can bring to mind the image of awakening within myself very simply. And then you might bring the Dharma to mind. So the Dharma is remembering the teachings and how they've touched you in your life at some point. That's why we practice, because we've been touched by the Dharma. And then the Sangha, I bring to mind my friends and bring to mind my teacher and other teachers and the lineage of teachers as an inspiration. And you can do that in just a minute. It doesn't have to be a great elaborate thing, but you'll by doing that, I remind myself of the context in which I'm practicing meditation. And that, I find, helps me to have the commitment to just sit through the mind going through its loops. Because when there's lots of future planning, the mind just needs time to settle down. You can't just say, stop, go into the body, because then you create a sort of a yo-yoing sort of effect where you sort of go into the concentrated for a few seconds and then you spring out of it, and then you concentrate and then you spring out of it. You're not really concentrated, you're just using attention a bit too harshly. So surrounding yourself in the context, a positive context, bringing to mind friends, the Buddha, the image of awakening, and your own experiences, and then making a commitment to sit for a period of time, so that you actually give your mind time to become more spacious, because that's what we're trying to, that's the relief, isn't it? When your mind is busy with planning, interpreting, ideas, craving, thinking about things, the relief is when we find spaciousness, when we become more whole again, when we just, Maitreya Bandha uses that lovely phrase, when we just reset to zero. We just come back to a more simple experience. That's not the end of the Buddhist journey, but we definitely need to come back to that, a less fabricated experience, a more simple experience of body and feeling. That's a long answer, so let's see if this, I hope that did something.
So there's a question from Louise, which is, how do we practice to stay with uncertainty and let go of views, including the one about how important it is that everyone just embraces uncertainty?
So how do we let go of views and embrace uncertainty, including the view that we need to let go of uncertainty? And that's from Louise. Well, anything can become just another an idea, can't it? And yeah, that is the nature of views. One can stick to, they're sticky things, aren't they, views, when we get stuck to them. And how do we, I guess uncertainty is a bit of an abstraction in a way. Uncertainty is an abstracted way of saying how things are. They're uncertain, they're unstable. And what that normally boils down to is that we're tense in the body, feeling discomfort and some sense of upset. We're sort of upset in some way. So it's a question of allowing space to experience the body. And we always say this, don't we? Bring your awareness to the body first, because it's a way of then acknowledging feeling. It gives us the stability out of which we can feel. And the body, of course, is where the feelings are, in a sense. So maybe we don't have this idea of sitting with uncertainty. We have this idea of being open to what we are experiencing in terms of the body, in terms of the heart, in terms of the mind and the images that are going on. So, don't sort of sit there thinking I must sit with uncertainty, and then we just can make ourselves more tense. It's a bit like the instruction to just relax. It usually has the opposite effect. And trust, take confidence and notice that there are changes during the course of the meditation. It might be that we don't, end up in a wonderfully spacious, awakened state of mind, but it's fairly unusual to sit for, say, 20 minutes and not be able to get a sense of relaxation, just a bit more spaciousness in the body. It's like just a bit more breadth to experience. So notice the small things, the small changes as well. Good. Any more questions?
There's a question from Adriana.
Adriana?
Which is, what can we bring into our practice so that the positive parts of what's happening right now, like connecting with others, compassion, appreciation, we can still continue them after the pandemic, however the world is?
So Adriana was asking, how can we continue after this crisis, developing those positive states of mind that we've learned about and that we've seen more into? Well, just the aspiration to do that is in itself a wonderful thing. I think if we, life presents opportunities for practice. Life is one long opportunity for practice. And there will be times when we don't practice so much. And maybe we get involved in, getting on and things are going okay, and we don't feel so strongly connected to practice. But life always presents opportunities for practice. So it's not just that there's this opportunity now. Any illness, any difficulty is a cause for practice, is an opportunity. Any of those qualities of heart that we need to draw up if we want to do something positive with our lives. You need courage, you need determination, you need effort. We need to be connected, friendly. Metta will always help you achieve positive things in your life. It's not all about when things are difficult practice. It's also a continual opportunity. It's often easier to see it when things are difficult, because that takes the lid off the whole situation and reveals a bit more. And in that, so with say bereavement is a common thing that people experience many times during their life, and that's a very, very difficult experience, but in that is a life-changing experience as well. So the aspiration to practice is what we cultivate in Buddhism, and it's the whole the journey of increasing that aspiration to practice in as many situations as we find ourselves in. And the more we practice, the more we want to practice. The more we let go of self-concern, the more we appreciate the value of letting go of self-concern. This is an opportunity. People are more self-restrained, aren't they, at the moment? It's actually quite calm in Bethnal Green at the moment, in a general sense. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's actually quite calm, and that's surprising because there's a lot of tower blocks. It's a very dense urban place, but there's a calmness and there's an ordinariness to what people are like, just walking around the park, walking with their children or the dog, or children and the dog. And there's a self-restraint, and I was thinking about self-restraint. We're having to do things that we're having to stop ourselves doing certain things at the moment. And connecting that to compassion. Let's connect this difficulty of self-restraint is actually potentially leading us towards letting go of self-concern. There's wisdom in what we're doing, or there's wisdom in self-restraint. I'm not sure how that I had in my mind how that related to Adriana's question, but I've forgotten. So apologies about that. But let's say so. Yeah, it's a good question how to keep it going, and that's why we develop that quality of aspiring on the path, and one goes backwards a bit and then forwards a bit, hopefully more forwards than back. So yeah, so maybe one more question or.
There's a question about how to have compassion for people who are lacking it, like people in our political group who wish the Prime Minister has done well.
Yeah, it's a question about how to have compassion for people who are lacking compassion, and an example was given. Who's that question?
That's from Vlada.
Who?
Vlada.
From Vlada. So thanks for that question. I mean, it does come up, doesn't it? We think, well, I'm being compassionate, but they're not. Or what's the point of me being, cultivating all these nice ideas, Buddhist ideas, empathy or compassion? It sounds great, but then there's the world out there, and they're not playing by the same rule book as me or something, or one can get into that. I'm afraid Buddhism is rather a unilateral act, actually. It doesn't, you can't bargain with the rest of the world in terms of metta. You can either do it or not do it. But yeah, those thoughts will come up. And I guess if everybody was practicing metta and being really considerate and compassionate, it would be absolutely amazing, wouldn't it? But it would also be another planet. And, one just has to practice. I guess the other reflection is to notice that we are not compassionate. A lot of the time. I'll speak for myself. I am not compassionate a lot of the time. A lot of the time I have thoughts of blame and hostility and irritation and all of that, and occasionally I sound off on social media as well. I try not to, I really try not to. But we just notice that actually we're a bit like that. And that perception of other people being somehow, like another political group. I mean, we're taking the divisions have come down quite a lot in this situation, and that's amazing. That is an amazing thing, that the divisions, the categorizations of people into this and that group and that political view, and this, to a large extent, they've sort of gone into abeyance. So we have this opportunity, but it will resurface, and not everybody will see things the way that we see things. So practice is a unilateral thing, and we can, certainly notice that the comparing oneself with others in a favourable or unfavourable way is not metta. That's something else. That's another thing. So, take heart and practice. That's what we can do. Yeah. So we're coming towards the end, and I've mentioned a few of the things that I thought just came to my mind. There's a loads of things that we can do when we practice the Dharma. It's It's a huge undertaking, and we practice as well as we can. And it's so I thought that to link the self-restraint that we're all having to practice to the compassionate aspect of that, to the fact that it's for others. So that's ethics. We have a chance to notice the effects of our actions on other people, particularly in terms of this self-restraint. But also, if we're just in our ordinary, in our homes, our actions are amplified in their effect on others at the moment. We have less place to run. So the more we can be restrained, and it's not a very popular idea, self-restraint, in a way. It seems a bit antithetical to how we like to think about things. But that self-restraint is a very positive thing if we link it to compassion and connection to others, and a kind of wisdom. And there's always wisdom involved in ethics, in behavior. So that's one thing. The other thing is to make this commitment when we meditate to the body, the breath, and the simplicity of experience, so that we can find some spaciousness. Our minds are going to be crowded out by thoughts about this situation, news and media and all sorts of things. So if we can find some spaciousness each day, that's going to be a tremendous resource for us, keeping us sane and allowing us to do what we need to do to help others and to be a positive a positive influence in the world. And lastly, as I was saying, kind of remembering the three jewels and bringing them to mind wherever we can, and remembering our Buddhist context. Because when you're in your bedroom at home, or you're in your lounge, or it's easy to forget. That's why we come to the Buddhist center, because we're surrounded by Dharma. We're in that imagination, that world. But we can do that. We can do that at home. We can bring things to mind. We can bring the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to mind in a way that's meaningful for us. So those are just a few reflections. There's lots more on that subject, but I hope that's been of some interest. So we're coming to the end. We'll close with the transference of merit and self-surrender, as we do every week, and I'll do that in call and response. First, I want to make thank you very much to everybody who has been giving. We are a culture of generosity here. All the teachers who lead classes and retreats are volunteers at the London Buddhist Centre. We run on a culture that as much as possible is done on the basis of just a positive wish to give. So if you wish to give, there's a link it's going to be put in the chat box, and it's underneath the feed, I think, as well, a link to our giving page. Monthly giving is what we really appreciate. We're very grateful for anything you can offer. So thank you very much for that. And I'm going to just ask Polly. Thank you very much to Polly, who's been reading out the questions, and Ariane, who's our technical support for this evening. Thanks for getting that sorted out so well. And have I forgotten anything? Okay. Yes, we've got the transference of merit and self-surrender, so we'll end with that. We've got classes all week, just to say, you probably know that. We've got yoga and meditation classes as a program on our website. So wish you all the best in the coming week, and hope to see you again soon. Thank you. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained in my acting thus go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. My personality throughout my existences. My possessions. And my merit in all three ways. I give up without regard to myself. For the benefit of all beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the infinite number of beings inhabiting limitless space.
inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become
So may I become
that which maintains all beings,
that which maintains all beings,
situated throughout space,
situated throughout space,
so long as all have not attained
so long as all have not attained
to peace.